Hello and welcome to WELSTech, the place where we explore the intersections of technology and ministry. Today on the show, we put some life into an ordinarily dusty topic, policies and procedures. Yes, they are absolutely critical in a digital world. We're so happy you decided to join us. Enjoy the show. WELSTech is a bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersections of technology and ministry. It is part of the podcast network sponsored by WELS, the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Our show today is hosted by Martin Spriggs and Sally Draper. Welcome back to WELSTech, everybody. This is Martin Spriggs, and you're joining episode 667, recorded on November 9th, 2021, a show about technology and ministry. And joining me on the other side of the mic, Sally with a friend. Hey, Sally, how are you?
I am good, but I have a new name to add to my repertoire today.
That's
it
right.
is Granny.
New title, new role.
And I just thought I'd bring on the youngest WELSTech fan. This little guy, Russell Jack, is only about 5 days old, and he is here to say hello to everybody on WELSTech.
Except he's asleep, and we sometimes do that to our audience, I've been told. So. But that's the way we like 5-day-olds, really, right?
Yes, definitely.
Well, congratulations, Grammy. What are you calling yourself? See, really, it's not
Granny.
up to you because
That's right.
They ultimately decide that when they can start talking.
Well, it wasn't up to me either because my husband actually picked his name first. His name is Grandpa Awesome, and he's determined. He said he's going to play it subliminally to them or something so that they get it right. Grandpa Awesome. So I'm Granny to go along with that.
Okay.
Actually named after my granny. And I figured I needed to carry on the tradition. My great-grandmother was Granny to me. So that's my name.
So you didn't do any coordination with the mother's side of the family?
No, but they
but you're there.
Yeah. And they're just as awesome or extraordinary or amazing or whatever you want to describe
There's
them.
all kinds of other adjectives available.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So
very nice.
We're just feeling really blessed.
Congratulations. That is awesome that you could, first of all, call yourself that, but be there and hold that little one. That's neat. So
definitely.
Congrats.
All right. I'm going to hand them off to Mom.
All right. As I mentioned, we are show 667 and recording this early November. The weather's turning a little bit. We just passed daylight saving time, so at least we can drive to work in the daylight, even if we have to come home in the dark. We are going to begin a little conversation today, which we've had off and on over the years. In fact, I think we've had some shows dedicated to this topic, but it's top of mind for me right now because I'm serving currently as a president of our congregation. And one of the things that I know that we really need to work on, regardless of the size of the congregation, are policies and procedures. As exciting as that may not sound, for those in leadership, and especially those in leadership in the IT space or the technology space, these are very important words. And I think we can talk a long time and many shows devoted to them, but we wanted to give a little bit of a why, what, who, how, where kind of overview, and hopefully convince you that, boy, this is worth spending some time looking at.
Yeah, sure. So if we started with why, Martin, I think the why would be that realization you have at the moment you don't have these things in place and you need them. And we can just look around, unfortunately, in our sinful world as to the many dangers that lurk out there and lawsuits and challenges to all different angles of the ministry that we want to carry out. And I think for security reasons, to protect those who worship with us, those who attend our schools, those who entrust us to care for their children in our childcare facilities, those who work for us or volunteer for us, all of those different angles need protection from the dangers that are out there. And besides that, we need to do things with excellence and carry them out consistently and well. And so having some of these things in place helps us do that as well.
The digital realm has really forced a relook at some of these policies and procedures as well, where we really didn't have to worry about data that was online, for instance, capturing data in online forms, live streaming. Do you have policies and procedures around who can be on camera and what you do with the digital archives? Do you publish bulletins or activity sheets, we call them in our congregation, with people's names on them? Those kinds of things all are things that probably should be covered, discussed, and documented with policies and or procedures. In the security and privacy space, there's something called PII, personally identifiable information, which has certain protections afforded it by the government. Other acronyms include PCI, GDPR. All of those things may come into play for your congregation, and you need to be aware of what rules and regulations apply and how you need to apply certain policies and procedures or have them in place. Even things like privacy policies on your website, which we've talked about before, really critical pieces of material that need to be thought through, documented, and maintained.
So yeah, you've got a great start there to the what part of it, all those different things that we hit on. It's pretty broad. And there's, I don't know, you have to wear a lot of different hats. You have to get into a little bit of the depths of things to understand exactly, you know, how to be in compliance with different legalities around privacy, for instance, or how to be secure with the data that you're handling and what kind of information is needed if someone wants to volunteer in your organization. Maybe you want to have a background check policy, or you may want to have job descriptions for them to make use of as they begin working in your organization. So lots of different angles to that. And yeah, the list goes on and on.
One thing I forgot to mention as far as why, before we go even further into the what, because the why drives the what, of course, is our organizations are made up of not just employees, but volunteers. And that information needs to be passed sometimes from person to person to person. Sometimes there's a new person in the same role year after year after year, whether that be a congregational or school officer, to a volunteer maintaining a website, to somebody helping out in the early childhood center. All those things, and not just the rules and regs, but how to do things, the procedure side. So we're not just talking about policy, but the step-by-steps and the importance of documenting those from person to person, especially in a volunteer-driven ministry. So critically important that things don't get dropped and that there is a comfort level coming into those positions saying, hey, I've got a playbook that I can go from, versus trying to reinvent the wheel or hope that the person that was doing it last year is available and is good at kind of doing a brain dump and sharing that information. That's not always the way it is. So,
right. Two different examples I can think of, Martin. One is just the people that do the data entry for the offerings each week. Maybe you have a rotating set of counters and they're responsible for going in and associating the offerings given to the right envelope number, person, etc. Having a good set of documentation and consistency with how they do that, the steps very well laid out. So maybe they only do it once a month. It's kind of hard to remember those steps, over time if you don't do it that often. So that's just one kind of an example. Another one that I can think of that I've kind of sat down in the chair to do is the Sunday morning worship projection or live streaming.
Yep.
Or both combined, that media area. And there's a lot of knobs and things when you start looking. It can be really intimidating, not as simple as just having one computer and a PowerPoint on it, but so many different things to pay attention to. And having good documentation, maybe just lots of screenshots and photos and images to supplement it, could be a real help.
You can't leave that up to Post-it notes always. So it's important to do that. And that really kind of leads into the who's responsible. And I think that depends from organization to organization. And it also depends on the what is it that you're trying to document? You mentioned a number of different techniques, which we'll talk about in a minute. But ultimately, the people responsible are the leadership in a particular area. So that could be a church council, a school board, a chair of a particular committee. But ultimately, the leadership in the congregation needs to care about this stuff. And sometimes this gets into the nitty-gritty details, and they don't need to do it all themselves, but they have to maintain a list and make sure that all this is both documented and regularly reviewed. So I think it's critically important to have ownership, not just of overall who's responsible for making all this stuff, or making sure all this stuff happens, but ultimately assigning it to them and, and some accountability as well.
Yeah. And it's not just taking ownership and making sure it happens, but it's also maintaining it. Just want to put a plug in that probably as soon as you write the policy and the documentation, you'll need to make updates to it. So always, maybe put it on a yearly cycle or something that you're revisiting and maintaining the documents that you do put together.
Yeah, that's a hard part. And I can probably go into our archives at the Synod office here and notice some moldy policies and procedures that need updating. So it's just kind of a discipline you have to get into, and doing an audit, an annual audit, not just of your books, but of your policies is not a bad thing at all. So let's move on to the how, Sally, and this is where it gets into some more technical solutions, which is the good news, because there's a ton of helpful stuff out there, including the importance of using templates. You want some consistency in how you do this. So there are, and it doesn't really matter what that is. There's all kinds of templates out there for policies and procedures, but the fact that you have one and some standardization so that you're including the important things and you're helping the person who's writing it not having to start from scratch every time they're building a new one or revising something.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice safety net, that you haven't forgotten some important component, and that the people that look at it have consistency of where to look for things and how it will be organized and things like that. I mentioned earlier, including images and screenshots. That kind of thing can really enhance your documentation. If there's anything to take a photo of, snap one and throw it into the document. You might even consider doing video. So like on the training side of things, maybe it's a training for offering entry. Maybe you do it as a Zoom meeting with, all the different people that'll be doing counting, but you record that meeting and you have that video, and someone who's brought into the group could watch the video archive, at least as an introduction to the process that they'll be doing. Maybe there's other opportunities to do videos just to explain things or to help people understand maybe your background check policy and why it is you're asking these things, and when the policy was decided and how you carry it out. Things like that might be easily captured and stored in a video format. A couple of tools for screenshots and video that I'll just throw out there are Snagit and Camtasia. Both really versatile tools and powerful tools. They both have nonprofit pricing, so make sure you look for that if you're interested in purchasing. And they're very useful for other things besides policies and procedures as well. So just a mention of those.
Yep. And keep in mind, you have different kinds of learning styles. Some are visual, some need kind of the step by step. So you have to kind of account for that. That increases the workload a little bit. But at the end of the day, what's the purpose? If you're writing documentation or capturing stuff that ultimately isn't used, then you've wasted your time. So it's important to understand that there may be people that don't learn the same way you do in the future that follow you. So make sure that you're taking care to provide them tools that are going to make them successful as well. The last segment, the last question that you should ask about policies and procedures is the where. And this is interesting because this is kind of where I started. Because when I came into the position I am at Peace Lutheran as president, I asked, well, where are all the policies and the procedures? And they're there, but they're in 101 different places and formats. And that was kind of the pain point that drove me to kind of go up the tree and think, well, let's look at the whole thing. And that's really going to be a project for 2022 for me, is to not just start with the where, but answer all the other questions. But the where is a big one. There needs to be a central location so everybody knows where to go to find the policies and the procedures, that there is a good naming convention, and maybe even more critical than anything else, the ability to search. So if you're not thinking maybe along the same lines about policy namings or procedures that the previous guy was, or that something that was developed 10, 15 years ago, you can at least do some searches and hopefully find what you're looking for. And that's a real savior there as far as getting to the thing that you really need to get at. Or what winds up happening sometimes is you think, well, there isn't a procedure or a policy that exists because you couldn't find it. You create one, and then there was one someplace. It just was named
Maybe
differently.
they're in conflict.
Right. Exactly.
Say different things.
Exactly.
Yikes.
So
I'm curious, Martin, it sounds like as you describe all this, that the cloud would be a great solution for what you're thinking of. Is that something you'd recommend for a congregation to dive into putting these kind of important documents there?
These days, yeah, you want to be careful with that too. And that kind of goes without saying, you want the security and the privacy around this. But I would think locations like Google Docs and those kinds of tools are your friend in this respect.
Definitely searchable there.
Yep. And, easy to create templates, and accessible. It would be another word that I would throw in there on the where. It really needs to be reachable by everybody who needs to have access to them. And Google has good permissioning tools available to it. And, there are other things like SharePoint and, other Dropbox kinds of solutions. But I think something that doesn't require somebody to VPN in or be in the building to use. And I would say that it wouldn't be a bad idea to store a local copy in good old paper format as well.
I'm just thinking that you also need a policy around the security of your cloud storage. So add that one to the list too, folks.
Maybe the first one. Exactly.
Yeah.
Before you start putting stuff up there. So that's just our little chit chat about policies and procedures, the why, what, who, how, and where. If you've got other ideas, or maybe you found a great solution for this, I think there are probably those kinds of things out there. Let us know what you're using, and we can share that with the rest of the folks here as well. So good stuff. Just good to talk through it, think about it. Hopefully we, stirred the pot a little bit, and we'll get people thinking about how am I doing that in my organization? All right, let's move on, Sally, to news in tech.
News in tech. I read this article a week or so ago about how to edit PDFs in your browser using Adobe Acrobat. And boy, did I get excited. That's pretty cool to be able to edit. There's actually new Adobe Acrobat Chrome and Edge extensions that allow you to edit PDFs directly in your browser. And this article from Make Use Of kind of walks you through that. I actually gave it a try. And the first thing that you're going to come to, I'm in Chrome browser, is, the ability to add the extension to your browser. And once you do that, you get some instructions. It actually brings up a sample PDF for you to try. And in that PDF, you can do different things like convert it to Word, merge PDFs, reorder pages, and you can also highlight text and do things like highlighting the text, making it strike through or underline, or copying the text easily. Now, you can do this not logged in to your Adobe account, but I would recommend that if you're going to make use of it, go ahead and create a free Adobe account and be logged into it. And then you can save things to your account in a cloud location, or you can download them easily or whatever. And you aren't just always considered a guest and maybe getting some limitations by being a guest, but pretty nifty to use. It made Adobe my default viewer in the Chrome browser. So there's different ways you can view PDFs, and it'll always use the Adobe standards or whatever. But then along for the ride are all these different editing options, which are pretty nice to have. And I don't know about you, Martin, but I work with PDFs all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely a standard for communication these days. So I thought this was a pretty great find.
Seems like more and more. And I believe you can even add annotations and comments in that file as well, which is great for marking something up and sharing that back. Because, yeah, I get contracts all the time. And I think that, which is a good thing, that PDFs have become more kind of the standard. And that's okay. And the fact that you can do it in the browser now is a big win. The Macs have been able to do that with a tool called Preview for a long time. Windows had kind of lagged a little bit behind, and this kind of obviates that. So, and Adobe's basically the standard for that. They created the PDF standard to begin with. So I think that's true. I got to check my math on that one, but I'm pretty sure they originated it. Yeah. So if I say it enough, it becomes true. All right, let's come back to Wells now, Sally. Lots of stuff coming up, cool stuff coming up in the Wells world.
Favorite time of year. We're just coming off of the different plays that the different schools are doing. Bethany and MLC both had plays. Actually, I think Bethany's is coming up this weekend. But more importantly, in December are the Christmas concerts that come up each year. Something really worth tuning in for if you can't be there in person. Martin Luther College Christmas concerts will be held on Saturday, December 4th at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday, December 5th at 4 p.m. And like I said, you can be there in person, but you can also tune into the live stream of those concerts and enjoy them from your own home. So mark those dates. The next weekend, Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, December 12th at 3 and 7 p.m. And I think maybe they only live stream one of them. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait. Neither website had the live stream information, and links available yet. It's a little bit early for that, but it's worth marking on your calendar. Those dates, December 4th and 5th for Martin Luther College, December 12th for Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary.
And we have a show before then, so if we get that information, we'll certainly put that in the show notes and share it on the show as well. All right, Sally, I think we're up to our picks of the week, and yours is very thematic.
By the magic of technology, I actually switched my pick and my news and tech, but they're both great news and they're both great picks. So I'm going to go with what I had down for news and tech. Both have to do with Adobe. The pick that I have then is that Adobe brings Photoshop and Illustrator to the web browser. So I think this has been a long time coming, Martin, that people would be able to use the web to do Photoshop. And you can make basic edits using a desktop or even an app. And I think it even, is allowing it to do it on a Chromebook because it's in the browser. It can be done on a Chromebook. So it's very basic at this time. It's not real robust. Slimmed down is how they describe it, but it'll let you share documents, allowing collaborators to provide feedback without downloading the apps or getting a subscription to the Creative Cloud. And just some basic editing tools for minor tweaks and things like that. So exciting to see that progress. Photoshop is definitely the industry standard, I would say, for image editing. And to see that editor coming to the cloud is a big deal, I think. So
excellent. All right, my pick of the week is a hardware pick, and I've got it right here. Those of you that are watching at home, I got to hold it in front of me. It is the iPad Mini. I think this is version, I want to say 6. Um, for years, the iPad Minis have been around for a long time. Basically, they're a kind of a pint-sized version of the iPad Pros or the regular iPads, which are 11-inch. That are a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger actually. And I thought, this is really too small to be useful until I picked one up and handled one and felt. But I've really wanted to do more handwritten note taking for a number of reasons. One is I think studies have shown that to take handwritten notes, you actually comprehend more because you have to process it and ultimately transfer that to something maybe a little bit slower of an input than typing. So you're tempted, I think, to transcribe when you type, but when you write, you kind of have to make sense of what you're hearing. And I found that to be true. So I wanted something I could write with, and I could write on my old iPad, which was a little bit bigger, but I felt that the form factor didn't necessarily lend itself to being as portable as I like. So I really thought I'd try this, and I've had it for about 4 weeks, and I've really enjoyed this device. It is, if you can see on the screen, this is the Starlight version. I don't know how they come up with these names, but it's kind of a silver gold. It's not like your space gray or your silver of days gone by. Like the form factor, it's very thin, very light, could fit in a pretty large pocket for a man, but easily fit in a purse for a lady. And I put a paper-like screen protector on here so that the Apple Pencil, which will click to the side magnetically, stays with it, and then you get kind of a better writing experience with it. It has all the same innards as the bigger brother, the regular iPad or iPad Pro or iPad Air. And but I just find I like the form factor. It's easy to carry around to meetings. I take it on the road. It's certainly fast enough to do all the things that you'd want a regular iPad to do, including video editing or image editing, all those kinds of things, email, et cetera, et cetera. I have bought I don't have that here with me, but a little Bluetooth keyboard you can use to set it up and external type to it. It is kind of just the right form factor. I did buy the folio case, which does protect it, and you can prop it up. But nice little device. I don't have the price offhand here, but it wasn't. It's about the same as an iPad, as a regular iPad Air, I believe. But I'm very impressed. They did a nice job with that. Very solid, nice performance. It's got the latest chip in it, and very functional for capturing notes and just kind of light web browsing, email, surfing, those kinds of things. So that's going to be my pick of the week.
I have a million questions, but I got to start with an observation, and that is it's really great form factor for watching Hallmark movies, just so you know.
I've not tried that yet, surprisingly enough.
All right, just check it out. You'll
have you tried one?
I'm sure.
Do you have one?
I don't have a Mini. I have an Air.
Okay.
But I've had it for a few years, and I use it for note taking. So I use Good Notes. I don't know what you use primarily. Notability. I have that too, and I just I found a lot more of the digital planners work well with Good Notes, and I do use that. But I mainly use it in church on Sundays. I take my sermon notes in it, and I really enjoy that experience. And good stuff.
What I've done, I take it to Bible study. I do take it to church, but I don't take notes on the sermon, which actually wouldn't be a bad idea. I do take it to Bible study, and what I do is I will capture the handout So I'll take a
Mm-hmm.
picture of the handout, import it into Notability, and then I can take notes right on there, so
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have to figure out some way to store the sheets when I bring those home. I find
Mm-hmm.
them actually is nice reference material because I put them all in the same folder. I can go back in time or see a whole series together. We sometimes will do, obviously, Bible study series. Got them all there, searchable when you do it
Mm-hmm.
that way as well. So that's one of the big benefits
Good
of that.
stuff.
So
Yeah, GoodNotes just expanded to allow, um, you know, cloud access to your files,
Mhm.
which is a big deal for them. So I was really excited to hear that because I've got a lot invested there. So
Yep.
good. I
Stuff.
hope
Maybe
you
we should
enjoyed
have
it.
maybe an episode talking about note-taking apps, because there's a ton of those as well.
That's
So,
true. Mhm.
all right, let's move on to our ministry resource. I'm going to take that one, and it is something called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. I think we've talked about this in the past. To go back and search our WELSTech website, wellstech.wels.net, by the way. This is a methodology or a framework for an organization related to um, leadership, meeting management, organizational health in general, structure, those kinds of things. A number of areas of ministry in the Synod office building, or the Center for Mission and Ministry, use this framework or tooling to kind of conduct and organize business. So it helps with goal setting, with strategic planning. They have what's called a vision traction organizer. Maybe you've heard of it. VTO is the acronym. But it really helps to kind of simplify things. And they've made a lot of their materials available online. I would highly suggest getting the book. It's by Gino Wickman. And he has some other tools or other writings as well. But we'll put a link in the show notes to these EOS tools, which includes an EOS toolbox, organizational checkup. There's a mobile app, there's videos, ebooks, those kinds of things. They're all available for free. You have to give them your information, then they'll send you a link. But if you're looking for how to maybe structure the leadership process or figure out how to do some strategic planning in a make sense, sustainable way, this would be something I would suggest. They're really big on breaking things down into smaller chunks or priorities. They call those rocks, and they really promote kind of a 3-month view of things. So if you're trying to plan something, think of it in a 3-month time frame versus maybe a year or 2-year project. Think of it in smaller chunks. And he does, and they do a nice job of explaining how that works and giving you some tools and templates about how to do that. There's some good meeting tools there as well. So that's going to be my ministry resource, not written from a ministry perspective. So understand that it's really meant for any kind of business startup, but it's really easy to apply to a church or school organization.
And I'll just give firsthand accounting that our church, our new church in North Mankato, St. Paul's North Mankato, they have this format in place. I noticed it because when they share the council meeting minutes, it's in that kind of templated look of a what they call a level 10 meeting. And that was kind of cool to see because I've seen that kind of thing reflected in my work life and to see the church that organized and things. So basically kind of giving you almost some of those templates like you were talking about earlier in our discussion, Martin. This could give you some of that structure that you're looking for organizing some of the things that you're putting together. And I've seen it in action. It seems to be working very well in our congregation.
Speaking of level 10 meetings, that reminds me, we did have Administrator Larry Schlomer on a couple years ago, maybe, certainly pre-COVID, because we were all together. And maybe we can put a link to that conversation in the show notes, because he talked about how he applied level 10 meetings to their world mission structure in their world mission meetings. So some of the positives of that came out of this book, basically. So,
well, you win the prize for good memory. That's a great memory, Martin.
just created some work for you too. Now you got to
Yeah, I
look that
made
up
a
and put it
note.
in the
Don't
show
worry.
notes. All right, let's move on to community feedback.
And a couple of things to report today, both kind of around our last topic, the show we just completed most recently, which was on web design. And in it, we shared some different points related to web design. We actually got an email, some feedback on that show from Sharon Ragnar, who's at Fox Valley Lutheran High School. And she complimented our work and said there were areas that could be emphasized even more, one of which is audience and another accessibility. We talked a little about accessibility, but here's what Sharon said. I listened to your podcast. You touched on many important elements of web design. There are a couple of key things that were not mentioned. If you revisit the topic, you might consider including a couple of these points. When doing a redesign of a website, before talking about the graphic design, it's critical to think about the audience and the purpose of the website. Is the main purpose to inform your current members and families? Is the main purpose to appeal to people looking for a church or school? If it's for current members and families, relevant topics should be front and center. If it's appealing to prospects, the main navigation tabs will have a completely different focus, and the pages for members can be behind a members news or resource tab or something like that. What are the demographics of your primary audience? All these things have an impact on where the design process will begin. And I think, Martin, just to pause with what she sent us, that is very excellent advice. And I think that's advice we've talked about before on the podcast, but I do agree it didn't really come out in what we were presenting in our last show. So I really appreciate Sharon writing and reminding our audience of that. She goes on to say website accessibility is not only a matter of being thoughtful and considerate of people who have disabilities, it is the law. And she describes it as kind of a wild west. They're not clearly or definitively laid out. Her research has shown that nonprofits must be accessible, and that while fines for noncompliance used to begin around $50,000, the starting fines have gone up. A second-time offender is over $100,000, and this doesn't include the cost of having a website analyzed and checked to bring one up to compliance levels and things. Some information. She shared a couple of links. Let's see. The W3c Web Accessibility Information and information on school compliance from a site called eChalk. So good and really fitting with our policies and things to think about policies around accessibility. So we really thank Sharon for taking the time to write to us and share those links. We'll include those in the show notes. And if anyone else has experience to add to the comments, we'd love to hear from you as well.
And the article that we were basing our conversation on did reference those as well. So go back to that show and kind of plumb the depths of that Adobe document. Adobe seems to have been front and center here in the last couple of shows, but they did a nice job with that as well, with some additional resources.
Excellent. And then we heard from longtime WELSTech listener, Julia Wagon-Connect. Julia is a member up at Faith in Anchorage, Alaska, where her husband, Nate, is pastor. And she wrote to us, gave us a little bit of an update on things happening up there. And she said she's teaching Spanish at their preschool and working on promoting the preschool. She wants to redesign the preschool logo, keeping it connected or including all or part of the church logo, but making it more kid-friendly. And she was just looking for any ideas and resources around that kind of thing. I definitely pointed her to our last show where we talked about design and shared a lengthy list of WELS associated designers who have businesses around that kind of thing. I actually went back, Martin, and added to that list because we failed to list Dana Kirchhoff, who we had interviewed on WELSTech's, I want to say it was 651. I think in my notes I wrote something different, but Dana actually
does a lot around marketing. And so maybe talking with Julia, it might help Julia to have ideas of what components should be in their logo and how she should approach the marketing that she's working on. So Dana's an excellent contact. And then a couple of designers that come to mind are Carissa Nelson and Ian Welch, both Wells folks who do amazing design work and logo work. And I will include links in our show notes to their websites as well. So
Excellent.
Check all that out.
Yep. Sally, how can somebody submit their very own community feedback?
Oh, that's what we love, isn't it? We have a website. It's called WELSTech, and it's at welstech.wels.net. That's where you'll find all the show notes and things. But importantly, up in the upper right area of the page, there's links to all kinds of social media sites. So you can tag us on Instagram or Pinterest, perhaps Twitter or Facebook is your jam. Whatever it is, you can find WELSTech there. You can also send us a voicemail from the link provided in the right navigation area of the website. So check it out. We even take email, and that's at welstech.wels@wels.net. Wow. Don't put me in charge of this anymore, Martin. I'm stumbling. WELSTech@wels.net.
And as everybody knows, Pinterest is my jam.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I said that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to the end of the show, which we are always kind of sad when it's over. It kind of flew by this time, Sally. I looked up and we're at the bottom of the agenda, but we will be back in a couple weeks, and we'll be joined by some of our favorite people. Jason Schmidt and Rachel Feld will join us, and we're going to continue our travel toward the education conference in 2022 in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. And we're kind of featuring some of the presenters there and some of those topics just to whet the appetite a little bit. And we'll have some good information about the conference as well. So tune in next time. I think there's going to be something for everybody. Until then, have a blessed week, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.